Hey, JJ, you had mentioned a couple games ago with the rookie that the minutes limit was going to be around 20 to 24. Do you have an idea if that will be able to go up at a certain point, and if that would allow you to put him back into the starting role if that was what you thought was best?
He'll start tonight. He'll still be 24 minutes, but he'll start tonight.
What did you try to get accomplished at shoot around this morning, and kind of just getting everybody on the same page? Was it anything specific?
Yeah, it was great. It was great to be on the court. First time in a long time we've been on the court together, so it was great. Cleaned up some stuff offensively. Got our defensive breakdowns in. Got some offensive breakdowns in. Did some script. It was wonderful. Spent yesterday talking about our red offense. It's funny, we put together an edit, had a couple ATO stuff we wanted to clean up, put together an edit of like 11 plays of our red attacks. And if you just watch those plays, you're like, oh man, they're really good. That's good basketball. Unfortunately, it was the only 11 plays from the Orlando game. So we'll be better. But the guys, they know, there are times we've got ISO, and when we have favorable matchups, we're going to do that with our best players. And there are times where the ball and body needs to move against certain defenses. And we got to do a better job of feeling that out of the game.
And then just thinking about there are so many times, or so few times you've had your whole roster available, and just figuring out the 9th, the 10th guy, has that been a different, if probably good type of challenge for you, was to figure out what that specific thing is going to be when you just haven't had that many games to try and see how it looks on the floor?
Yeah, again, we're gonna continue to place an emphasis on defense, so the guys that are guarding are going to play.
JJ, what's the balance between like art and science when it comes to putting together a starting five, and how have you found that over the course of this year in terms of relying on data versus relying on feel and different things like that?
Yeah, we always talk about the substitution patterns in a game, and there's obviously flexibility within that, and how we want to stagger our best players, and making sure there's enough shooting on the floor, making sure we have defenders and all that stuff. Like there's a lot that goes into it. In relation to the starting lineup, like Rui's done an outstanding job all season. We feel really comfortable with him. We kind of view Doe as like a sixth starter. I think right now, based on the previous month with this group, Rui he hasn't like lost his spot. I think he does better in that role.
So we've talked a lot about the defense over the last couple of games, and rightfully so. But I think over the last 10 games, you guys are 23rd in defense efficiency, but also 23rd in offense efficiency. And we've heard from, I think, you and some of your players that the offense is going to figure itself out. But what have you seen on that end? Obviously, players in our lineup, that's obvious. But execution-wise, that's not leading to success there. And if guys admit that, hey, we shouldn't let our offense dictate our defense, but if they are, what can you do to clean up the offense to maybe not have that let down?
Yeah, well, I'll start with this. One of the reasons that our offense has cratered over the last 10 games is because we didn't have our two best transition scorers. Our transition numbers are way down. Our transition opportunities are way down. So that's the first thing. I think we've also had a number of games with high turnovers, and that's contributed to it. Again, this is where it's more art than science, is trying to integrate a generational ball dominant player with a generational player who has spent his career being ball dominant, with a third guy who, when he's been the ball dominant guy, has put up 22, 8, and 7 every night. So we got to figure that out. And we've had a number of discussions over the last couple of days. Those guys are committed to it. It's that to me is the art piece.
Excuse me. You mentioned before that in all of the changes you guys have had during the season, Austin's been the one whose role has been, fluctuated the most out of, most of the main guys. What do you ask of him now that you have both LeBron and Luka back in the lineup? And guess what are, I guess, use the word term martial arts. Like, what are the martial arts for him when everybody's available now?
Yeah, I think patience. I don't think his aggression will ever turn off. I think he's naturally aggressive. And we need that thrust that he provides, but he also has to be patient at times. With playing off ball, and we can introduce all the off ball stuff in the world. A lot of guys don't want to move. That's fine. A lot of guys haven't played movement basketball. So AR's got to be the guy that, and he has been sort of the driving force of the off-ball stuff. When we've done that, I think it's been really good.
I wanted to ask about the season 2 co-host of Mind the Game and your thoughts on Steve Nash stepping into that role.
Yeah, I think Steve will be great. He's a friend. I've known him now for about 11 years. And incredibly intelligent. Similar to LeBron, has a real passion and love for the game and the goodness of the game. And I think he'll do a great job of expressing that and exploring that.
Tyrese Halliburton's obviously the guy you've gotten to know, had on the podcast and whatnot. What impresses you about him as a player, but also as a person and as a young voice in the game?
I think joy. I think he plays with a joy. Him and I text at different times last year. There were times when he kind of lost that joy. And, he had the, I don't know if it was here or on the road, maybe the locker room interview at the beginning of this season. And he's at his best when he's playing with joy. The other thing that I'm impressed, we were talking about this as a staff yesterday, he's got insane assist numbers, and he doesn't dominate the ball. His willingness to give it up early and essentially initiate what they're trying to do. They're a first 8-second team, and the next 2 games are as well for us. Chicago and Memphis, those 3 teams, in terms of getting to their first action, crossing half court, they're the top 3 teams in the league. And there's an initial thrust you have to guard with Indiana, and there's a second thrust you have to guard. And his willingness to just get off the ball early and allow the offense to evolve in a 24-second possession is really impressive.
JJ, I've seen before you talking about how Rick Carlisle helped you on your path to eventually getting into coaching. Can you expand on that a little bit more, and what's it like going against him now, given that fact?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in Dallas long, but Rick and I spent some time together, got to pick his brain a little bit. He certainly planted a seed in my brain about coaching. I didn't really golf yet then, but there was an off day and he knew my family wasn't around, so he shot me a text, said, "What are you doing today?" I said, "I literally am not leaving my apartment." And he's like, "All right, I'm coming to pick you up in 15 minutes. And he drove me north of the city to this small little simulator fitting room and hit balls. And it was, the first time that he, brought up the coaching thing and told me how much I would enjoy it. I'm enjoying it. He was right, which he's right a lot of the time.
To expand on Kobe's question about Reeves, I mean, for all the roles he's been in this year, he's excelled in all of them, having a career year. How impressed have you been with his ability to adapt to whatever role you guys have put him in and still excel?
Yeah, it says a lot about him as a person. It's not easy night to night to have your role change, and I think I see a lot of myself in him, to be honest with you, not just because we're white, guards and we're both dickheads, apparently. But no, the way that he's able to just figure it out on the fly, and I always say, like, there's a lot of guys whose role is and what they're asked to do game to game, from game 1 to game 82, it doesn't change. And that could be a guy like Vando, it could be a guy like LeBron. We're not asking those guys to change how they play. Austin's had to do that from a function of the different iterations of our team. And he's adapted on the fly extremely well.
But you mentioned it. I'll ask. I was going to ask something different. But how did you learn that you were the guy and that LeBron today?
Group chat. Not with LeBron. No, I was at I was having a glass of wine and a steak with Mark Jones last night at the Capitol Grill, and Bron and everybody walked in. They let me know that there was some heat coming. They didn't expand on that. And I assumed it was about other people. I took it as a compliment.
Yeah. You mentioned Rick taking you to hit balls and tell you that I think you'd be a coach someday or something like that. I don't think players always like to hear that because that means they're not players anymore. When he first told you that, I'm just curious, how did you take that?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I was done, so I was in a good place to take that. I think in reflection, and I actually have reflected, not because we're playing the Pacers, but recently I was reflecting on those 2.5 months and thinking about that was the end when I was in street clothes a lot of the time because of injury, and then thinking about the beginning when you're in street clothes and you're trying to pave a way and launch a career and establish yourself in the league. And when you're a young player trying to do that, you're very self-involved, meaning, woe is me, I'm a victim, all that stuff. At the end, you're very grateful and you're in a better headspace to actually observe what's going on. And so being able to sit in meetings during the playoff series, actually like listening to the game plan and understanding why they were doing it versus you're doing that as a player, but you're also like thinking about your matchup that night and you're thinking about how they're going to guard you. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of I got to go perform versus I'm sitting here in sweatpants and I can actually tune in and listen to what is really going on and kind of look at it from 30,000 feet. And it was a helpful 2.5 months. And I say this all the time, like I also made incredible friendships there beyond just with Rick. It was great how Dallas and the Mavericks just accepted me, even though I was a shell of myself.
Last one, JJ, just following up, you were saying earlier about the Reds and like the switches. Presumably, Luka and LeBron have seen, pretty much everything. But are there still points in film like where it's them that you're having to clarify some things with? Is it more the surrounding players, and like what are some of those, even if it's one or two, just principles of what works against an NBA defense and switching?
Yeah, everybody is a star in film at different points, but there's a holistic nature to how we want to play. So if it's breaking down, what we're doing against blitzes and pick and roll, or what we're doing against fires and ISO, like everybody needs to be locked in. The Reds, a lot of it is a philosophy. You can't come down every time and just be like, all right, we're going to run this set, because they're just going to switch everything. It has to be more about it. This is why Indiana is so good. It has to be more about concepts and how to create advantages. And honestly, if you look at those 11 clips from the Orlando game, we did that. And it ends up being the same exact thing as a fire or a blitz. You're creating a 4-on-3, you're creating a foot advantage, you're creating an angle where you can now get 2 on the ball. So but it's not, you stand here and I stand here. No, that's not how you play against Reds. I think for great players, it's natural to just be like, well, I'll just win my matchup. And some nights we can do that. Truthfully, like some nights we can do that. Other times against certain teams, we have to play a little bit different.